So apologies, I didn't get the first part of the teardown here on camera. But what's happened is hooked the drive up. It booted my DOS/2.5 disk just fine. It was able to format. I was able to write a new DOS disk. The drive itself seemed to work fine. However, it very quickly developed a squeak, kind of a squeal, that when the motor was spinning the disk, it squealed, and when it stopped, it wasn't. And so I've been kind of trying to tear down in a little bit to see if I can figure out the source of the squeal. And I tore down the top of the drive here a little bit. The micro switch and write protect sensors have been removed. Those will need to be put back. On the little arm here, this guy that carries this mechanism was removed, so I could get this out and see if, you know, if there was an additional way to lubricate it. Really, the question being, is this what was squealing? Don't drop it. I don't know. And the problem is I can't get it to spin long enough without the computer on it or hooked to it to get the squeal to come. So it definitely has to do with something get a little bit warm, perhaps. So what I wanted to do here was, of course, drop the thing, was disconnect various parts here. Let's see if we can get this connector off. Man, why is that so tight? It hasn't even budged. I don't really get why these are so tight. I got something better to grab that with. Might get a little squarer grab on it. Okay, that definitely worked better. Maybe hold the drive up. Disconnect the heads. And can I flip it over here? Hopefully not break these wires. And see if there's a way to... It does look like I can drip a little bit of machine oil down in there. There's a bearing there. There's really a bearing pressed in. There's probably two bearings pressed in here. And I'm guessing one or the other of those is what's squealing. I don't have to tear the top off the drive and remove this whole mechanism. That would not be fun. So let me try and get a little bit of oil in there and see if I can get it to kind of flow down into the bearing. I don't tend to use the floppy drive a lot, honestly. I've got a Fuji net that I've been doing most of my playing with the machine with. It's nice to be able to have emulation. I can see the oil perhaps being drawn down in a bit. I'm going to get a fair amount on there. And I'm going to let it soak. Hopefully that wasn't a mistake, releasing the belt. Looks like the oil has flown down in, or flowed down into the bearing, perhaps. A tiny bit more. Little notch cut there. I'm sure that was for balancing. With the mass of that, I would expect it to spin longer than it is, so it's definitely aging a bit. I can't really get at the other bearing I suspect is in there. I don't want his oil dripping back out of this when it's running down onto the disc. As long as it wants to kind of draw the little drops down in, I will give it a few more. Great. I was kind of afraid taking that belt off was going to do exactly what it did. That is, I think I've got it back on now. It's just a matter now of there, it's back on. It seems to be running okay. Take a little piece of trying to decide how I want to do this. I don't want that oil dripping back out of there into the mechanism or down onto the PCB. And the question becomes, can I position something like this with a little bit of tape just to help keep it from dripping through? It has been my day apparently for plastic and Scotch tape. Just to kind of help keep the oil from dripping back down through the... So we should be able to flip that over now. And I'm not going to hook the heads back up yet. Just sit it down into place. And now I've got to look at getting... Actually, I want to look at lubricating this first. We put some oil on it earlier. I don't think it's what was squealing. But you just don't know. But I can now actually see into it to kind of get some lubrication on the spring. We definitely got a little bit more down in there. What I do know is this is going to be just a laugh a minute to put back together. So that drops on there like that. And then should fold around like that. That notch goes in there. And now it's going to be the interesting piece is getting the end here that flexes back together, because it had 4 spacers. It's got a fairly heavy steel one, and these other ones that of course aren't magnetic, so that doesn't help. They're fairly thin, so they're hard to get a hold of. Oh, come on. Can't get anything up under it to pick it up. I'm sure it's going to be true laying down there as well. So somehow get all of this in place. With this, and get it set in there. So the screws will fit through. Should have prepped ahead of time. able to then just slide it into here. Oh shoot, it actually needs to go in this direction. I don't think it actually matters. Needs to go in like so, and it needs to have those screws driven down through it. So it was one of these little guys, and one of these little lock washers. One started. The hard part here is going to be to get it back in perfect alignment. Not that there's a whole lot of play available. It actually went back together easier than I thought it would. But that's because I cheated, used that little bit of Scotch tape to hold the four shims together and make that little handle there. So it actually looks just absolutely fine. So all I managed to do was add a little bit of oil. So at this point, let's actually, I guess, put it back together. I'm going to give a little more torque on those. So up out of the way. God, that's tight. There was a smaller one with a washer and a larger one, and the larger one was for the sensor here. I need to actually run the wires the right place. I don't think the alignment on this is too critical as long as it's looking down through the hole there. Either the right protect notch and the floppy lets light through, or it doesn't. It's not a precision adjustment like it is here on the Track Zero sensor. And then there was a long screw. So this was one side there. Tiny little screw there to hold it in place. And I can hear the switch. Activating and deactivating, so I know I'm back in pretty close to where it was originally. All I can really do at this point is go back down, plug it in, see what happens. Debating whether to go ahead. Well, and put this part back in. It worked fine without the RF shielding. It'll have a little bit better airflow without it. I don't think it's critical. There's actually one more spot. I wanted to put a little bit of silicone lube. Or the, I'm not using silicone, I'm using lithium. Just to go back up on the shelf so I know where it's at. The lid for this. While I'm here, I'm going to put a little dab of lithium up in a spot you can't really see. But it has to do with this piece here riding on a little plastic piece that juts out. I'm going to see if I can get some grease in there. Just to give it a little bit of yep, that looks absolutely fine. Well, at this point, I just need to go put it back together and let it run and see if it squeals. So, off I go downstairs to test again.